Hi guys, Doug Fernandes along with colleague John Lembo on the grid. John, we usually start off by breaking down last week's games and looking ahead toward Friday's games.
Right.
But something happened yesterday, another black eye for the Manatee High football program. 2 players were arrested on lewd and lascivious battery, having sex with a girl under 18, actually age 15. The news today is that they were both released on $15,000 bond from Manatee County Jail, which means $1,500 in cash.
Okay.
So they're home. John, I got to ask you, you've been a long-time follower of the program. You've chronicled when Joe Cadan and John Booth. At what point, I mean, what's going on up at Manatee? At what point do you say that a head coach is not responsible for the behavior of an 18-year-old, and at some point they get to assume some personal responsibility?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's really hard to say what each individual case is about.
Right.
I mean, you don't really know these kids too well, their home lives, and
Right.
can't really comment on that. But I mean, it's tough. I mean, these coaches aren't with these kids 24/7. They're with them at practices, with them at games. Manatee has that program they do each Wednesday for character development,
Right.
where they bring someone in to talk to the kids, give the kids a binder. Dennis Stallard, who's the special teams coach, he started that. He still does it. So I know Manatee, as other programs around here, they try to instill good values in their players. But I mean, it's a shame that this happens. 6 months after the burglary charges for 3 players back in March. So. It's just a shame because it takes away from the kids who are doing the right things. The kids who are going to class and being good in the community and being good role models. But, as you said, it's definitely another blemish for Manatee's football program. But again, I mean, it's hard to just blame the coaches when they're only with these kids for a fraction of time per week. And you and I have been to a lot of football games at the end where they tell the kids, be smart this weekend. It's a long. Yeah, I never heard a coach ever say, "Hey, go out and get in trouble this weekend. Go out and
Right.
break the law." I never heard a coach say that. So, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the kids involved. Fortunate for the the victim, and hopefully, the people turn their lives around and I'm not saying good will come from this, but hopefully there's a future for these kids and we'll see. But yeah, again, it's hard to blame just the coaches. I think that's a little too easy. So.
I mean, $1,500 cash, I'm sure there's a trial date being set. But regarding the 2 incidents, again, there's going to be public perception out there
Right.
that perhaps it's a program that lacks a little institutional control. Frankly, these incidents aren't happening at any other school besides Manatee High School.
Right, and you can't really control public perception.
Right.
Again, and the thing is, we're not around the programs all the time either. We can't just go to one school for every single day, every single practice. But like I said, it is unfortunate. I mean, I don't know the Manatee coaches real well. I just know them from going to practice, covering games, and I mean, they all, from my experience, have all been nice to me and
Sure.
upstanding with me. But again, you're right. I mean, twice in the span of 6 months with the same program. It's unfortunate, but again, we don't know the stories of these kids, what they're going through at home. We don't know that, good or bad. So it's really hard for us to judge. But again, public perception is going to be public perception, and people are going to have their own opinions. And I remember reading some of the comments on our story yesterday. There was, a lively debate. But again, people perceive what they want. And for us to judge, it's hard to do that. Like I said, we're not with these kids all the time or with these programs all the time. But it is unfortunate for Manatee High. I mean, twice in the last 6 months now.
What I have a problem with, and again, we want to stress, this wasn't forcible. Obviously, the 15-year-old girl consented, but if you're under 18, you have no consent. You can't consent to having sex with an 18-year-old. What I have a problem with is I can't get my mind around this, the 16-year-old who posted this on a website, videotaped it and posted it on a website. I just can't get my mind around that. That shows to me abject stupidity, not knowing what you're doing. That's what I have the problem with. Maybe these kids didn't know the law, but to post something on that where eyes are going to be on it, I have a little trouble with that.
Yeah, and you know what? And this is stuff that you and I didn't grow up with, all the social media and websites and stuff. I'm not saying I ever did anything like this, that what to be videotaped,
Sure.
or anyone, my friends or anything. But again, it's just such a different era now. I mean, you know, to me, videotaping something when I was a kid was that big clunky VHS,
right.
you know, and then you put it like in the dusty tape racks of your basement. But
wow.
yeah, I mean, it's just a much different era now with these kids and how they handle things. And you know, like you said, I mean, it's difficult that somebody would do that. But again, it's just, you know, as kids growing up in a different era, I'm not excusing it.
Right,
it's just something that, you know, I can't relate to, because when I was 16, I never would have thought of doing something like that.
And if you're a head coach, you have all these things you have to worry about, social media and posting things. Guys
Yeah.
like Sprague and Meckley didn't have to worry about that years ago.
And like I said, too, with all coaches, I mean, again, I'm not making an excuse for anyone, but I mean, you got 60, 70 kids, and I mean, you can't be with them all the time, and it really is tough. And you mentioned all the social media stuff. You're right. I mean, remember a couple weeks ago when you said that Todd Johnson, Riverview, said don't engage in trash talk on social media.
Right.
Not at the mall, not at like, you know, a restaurant, on social media.
Right.
So yeah, it is a much different era for the kids, for the coaches, for us.
Right.
You know, and I think in a way, you got to be more responsible. What was that? I think an NFL coach or someone recently said, or I think Joe Madden, when he was with the Rays a couple of years ago, said, before you hit send, think.
Think.
Before you hit that button, think. I think it's like David Price or someone tweeted something out that was kind of negative.
Right.
And he said, you got to think now before you do that. And when you videotape something and do that, I mean, that's, you know, you got to think before you do that stuff.
Obviously, there's not much thinking involved when you do something like that. I hope it works out okay. But again, they're facing, it's a second-degree felony, punishable up to 15 years in prison. So these kids are looking at some serious problems for what they might have considered was just a lark that would be quickly forgotten. But enough about that. Let's go to the games.
Okay.
You were at Manatee last week.
At Palmetto.
At Palmetto.
Right.
They played Manatee.
Yeah.
Manatee needed a late field goal to win.
Very late.
But they had 6 turnovers. That's on Manatee. Like,
Right.
take away those turnovers, so they maybe win more comfortably then, right?
You know, I don't know about the whole what-if game. I mean, look, I mean, Palmetto was opportunistic. They scored off all those turnovers from Manatee. And it's funny, what did I say here last week? I said the team that fumbles the most won't win this game. Well, Manatee fumbled 5 times, got intercepted once, and they still won the game. What really hurt Palmetto was Manatee had a lot of big plays. All their touchdowns came from at least 29 yards out. And the biggest play of the game, in my mind, aside from the field goal, was Palmetto goes up by 9. It was 35-26 with about 3:18 remaining, and it looked over. Very next play from scrimmage, Kavius Price, who had an interesting night, he takes a short pass, 57 yards for a touchdown. Now all of a sudden it's a 2-point game with 3 minutes to go. That to me was the play of the game, because I mean, Manatee came right back and they scored, took no time off the clock, and the Manatee's defense came up big, forced the punt, and A.J. Colagiovanni, the Manatee quarterback, played a great game. That fourth quarter, he pretty much led them down through the 19-yard line for that field goal. They gave him the ball and said, win the game for us, and he did. A big coming of age for him, I think. So I think Manatee obviously made some mistakes, but to win a game like that, I think it shows a lot of, you know, I don't know about character, if that's the right word, but there's a lot of bounce back that you have a bad night. And also Palmetto, too. Palmetto was down by 10 in the third quarter. And it looked like, here's how Manatee runs away with it, and they didn't. They came right back and scored. So both teams, you know, it was sloppy, but it was a great night for football, great crowd. They were into it. And one of the memorable games I've covered since I've been here.
You know, another game, Sarasota Booker on our show I do with Tom Try and WTF, we also make calls. One of the games we handicapped last week was Sarasota Booker. I thought for sure Booker, coming off that nice win against Riverview, might go in against the winless Sailor team and win. They were destroyed 38-6. You have a story coming out? Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, Josh Booker, the running back for Sarasota. 268 yards, 4 touchdowns. The story right now is up on HD Preps. It'll be in the paper tomorrow. He's a sophomore. I talked to Brian Riles, head coach. They love this kid. Not only is he's big, he's fast, but they say he loves the game. You know, his favorite player is Marshawn Lynch. He knows all about Mike Ford and the records he broke at Sarasota. He respects the history. They say he's a football rat. And the thing about him that they really like is he always thanks his old linemen. You know, I talked to the quarterback, Brian Gagg, who's known him since our Sun Devil days, say he's a great teammate, a great person to be around. I mean, you can't ask for that every week, 270-plus yards and 4 touchdowns, but they may have something pretty special, you know, in him. They have a young quarterback, young O-line, young running back. Could be a good young core for Sarasota going forward.
You know, we started a feature last week, our lock of the week.
Our gridlock.
Our gridlock of the week. That's a play on words even better. Our lock of the week, basically we both took the same game. last week.
Right.
The Mooney-Venice game ended up being a total lock. This week, there are a couple of other games. Your lock of the week being what this week?
The game I'm covering, Palmetto Southeast.
Right.
I think Southeast they're young. They're turning the corner. They played Braden River. They shut Braden River out for a half last week.
Right.
Pretty impressive. But I just think Palmetto, there's a chip on their shoulder from last week, and Palmetto just has too many weapons. I mean, so many weapons offensively that I don't think Southeast is quite there yet. I think Palmetto will win by a couple of touchdowns.
Well, my lock of the week is the Riverview at Venice game. Venice hasn't lost to Riverview since Peacock took over in 2007. Venice at the top of our poll. Riverview is 0-2, staggering a little bit. My lock of the week is obviously in the especially game at Venice. It would be a great upset for Todd Johnson, a great guy in the program, if they were to pull that off. But I'm going with Venice as my lock of the week.
Yeah, I mean, not a bad choice. I mean, I haven't seen Riverview play. I guess saw Venice for that half in the spring game. So, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's not a terrible pick.
Quickly, Lincoln at Manatee. Lincoln's 0-2. Do you expect the Manatee to continue their winning ways here?
Yeah, I think Manatee hasn't lost a home game since 2011.
Right.
So they like playing in Hawkins. They haven't lost a home playoff game since 2005. They like playing in that stadium. They always get a nice crowd. Lincoln is 0-2, but they've lost to two pretty good teams. I think Columbia City and Niceville. So and they're always a good program. I think Manatee will win. I think they discovered some things last week, and I think, like I said, A.J. Cole Giovanni had a big week.
Right.
I think now their passing game is pretty good. It's not just crowd the box. It's Manatee because they can pick you apart with the passing game. I think they'll win this week. And I think if they do, that'd be a nice, 2 in a row to beat Palmetto because they play a district game next week. We're getting to the district already.
So which as you said, are the key games in the football season.
So I think this week for them is very important because to win 2 straight, go into a district game, that's some nice little momentum for you as opposed to losing another one now. Okay, now I got to regroup again. So I think they'll be okay. I think they'll win this week.
So we got some district games to sort of break down and look forward to next week. We broke down a lot today.
Yep.
Some of the stuff we'd like to avoid going into next week and just talk about the football game. So hopefully that will be the case.
Yep.
So once again, for colleague John Lembo, I'm Doug Fernandes, and we'll see you next week on The Grid.